The biggest land deal in American agricultural history did not go to an Iowa farmer or a Texas ranching family. It went to a company headquartered in Hong Kong, and it happened with almost zero public debate. That was 2013, and it was just the beginning. Chinese entities currently own approximately 384,000 acres of American farmland. That number has increased by over 5,000% since 2010, not 50%, not 500%. 5,000%, and it happened without a single serious national conversation, while American politicians were fully briefed and American businesses were quietly cashing the checks. This video is not about panic. It is not about blaming anyone for their ethnicity. It is about one specific question that Washington has refused to answer honestly for over a decade. How did this happen? Who let it happen? And why is it still happening right now? To understand how China built ownership positions inside America, you have to understand that there was no announcement, no press conference, no dramatic moment anyone could point to and say, that is when the line was crossed. It happened through a system, patient, quiet, and completely legal. The main tool is called a variable interest entity. Chinese companies set up shell corporations in other countries, usually the Cayman Islands or Luxembourg, to buy American assets in a way that does not show up as Chinese-owned on American government filings. The company buying the asset looks American or European on paper. The money and control flow back to China. This is not against American law. It is a gap in the system, and it was used massively throughout the 2000s and 10s while American regulators were focused elsewhere. Think about what that means for you specifically. When you buy a house, your name goes on the deed. When you open a business, your identity is on the registration. The entire American legal system is built on the assumption that ownership is traceable. The variable interest entity structure was specifically designed to make Chinese ownership invisible inside that system. And it worked. For over a decade. The second method was more direct. Fufeng Group, a Chinese corn processing company, purchased 300 acres of farmland in North Dakota in 2022, located just 12 miles from Grand Forks Air Force Base, one of the most sensitive military drone and surveillance sites in the country. The state of North Dakota blocked the project, but here is the detail nobody talks about. They blocked it using state law because no federal law gave Washington the clear authority to stop it. A company connected to a foreign government came within 12 miles of a top American military installation, and the federal government had no legal tool to intervene. This is not concentrated in one corner of the economy. It is happening across 3 separate fronts simultaneously, and each one hits closer to home than the last. Chinese entities now own land in at least 27 American states. The biggest single move was the purchase of Smithfield Foods in 2013, once the largest pork producer in America, acquired by Hong Kong-based WH Group for $7.1 billion. That single transaction handed a Chinese-controlled company direct ownership of the farms, processing plants, and distribution networks that put food on millions of American tables every single day. Here's the question worth sitting with. The United States does not allow its own citizens to buy land in China. Foreign nationals cannot purchase Chinese farmland under any arrangement. It is written into China's constitution. So ask yourself this: should a country that locks its own land away from foreign buyers be allowed to freely purchase yours? There is no clean answer, but it is a question neither party in Washington has been willing to face directly. And the silence itself tells you something. Here is the part that should make every American uncomfortable, regardless of party. The reason Chinese ownership inside America grew this large between 2010 and 2022 is not that politicians did not know. Congressional intelligence briefings on China's economic strategy have been routine since at least 2015. A bipartisan government commission has been raising these exact concerns for over a decade. The reason it kept growing is simple. The American businesses profiting from Chinese investment were better organized, and louder than the national security voices trying to slow it down. American farming companies welcomed Chinese money when domestic buyers were not interested. Real estate developers sold to Chinese buyers when the local market was slow. Venture capital funds took Chinese investment when other money was hard to find. Every single one of those deals had an American winner, with a direct financial reason to keep the rules loose. This is not a conspiracy. It is a conflict of interest built into the structure of the system, and it is the same conflict of interest that allows any foreign government with enough capital to legally buy access to critical American infrastructure, one quiet transaction at a time. At what point does the free market end and national security begin? Who decides where that line is? And what happens to ordinary Americans, to your food prices, your housing market, your job in the tech sector, while Washington argues about where to draw it? Right now, 27 states have passed their own restrictions on foreign farmland purchases. The federal government has a collection of incomplete laws and an underfunded review process, and the most strategically important purchases, the ones that actually matter, mostly happened before any of this framework existed. Step back from the political noise for a moment and look at the factual picture. A country that the United States officially calls a competitor has legally built significant ownership positions inside American agriculture, American technology, and American real estate, using tools that American law was not built to detect, through a window that American political dysfunction left open for over a decade. The right response is not panic. It is not directing anger at Chinese American citizens, which is both factually wrong and historically dangerous. The right response is a serious, honest conversation about what equal and fair access should look like in a world where economic competition and national security can no longer be treated as separate issues. Other countries already had that conversation. Australia reformed its foreign investment review process in 2020. Canada added national security screening powers in 2022. The European Union built a coordinated review system across all member states in 2019. The United States is still arguing about whether to have the conversation at all. And while that argument continues, the buying continues too. Now, I want your honest answer, not the cable news version, not the party line. Do you think a foreign government should be able to buy American farmland? Is this a free market issue, a national security issue, or both? And do you actually trust the people in Washington right now to draw that line correctly? Drop it in the comments, because that question deserves a real answer. And so far, the only sound coming out of Washington is silence. I will see you in the next breakdown.